All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. It's Wednesday. It's hump day. Always in a good mood on Wednesdays, I guess, even when the news is bad as it is. And we'll talk about those salty Dems. I got their pictures on the thumbnail, Brian Tyler Cohen and David Pakman. We'll get to that in a little bit. I will lead, as I always do, with a story from Gaza and the continuing murderous rampage, the genocide, which really got even darker. It's always darker every day, but yesterday was a dark day, even among many dark days in Gaza, with well over 100 Gazans, Palestinian people murdered by the Israeli military, of course, with the full support of the U.S. government with our tax money. You know, they're using our tax money to just kill innocent people, innocent women, men, children. It's horrific. There's no other way to talk about it, no other way to describe it. Before I get to that, I just real quick want to just billboard, though. I want to just talk briefly about audience capture. Now, this is not what we're talking about when we talk about the salty Dems, those who are part of this influence peddling scheme. Brian Tyler Cohen apparently, getting a grant from dark money, wealthy, presumably Democrats. I don't even know that they necessarily are, to support podcasters, YouTubers, TikTokers, whatever you want to call them, who will basically toe a certain line, will present certain content. And there's, arguments over exactly what they had to do to get that money, or if they even had to really do anything. So we'll get into all of that. But that's capture by, it's the capture by money, right? By payment. You're paid to do something. That's what people do, right? You do a job. You do lots of things you don't want to do because of money. Maybe some things you really want to do. And you're like, yes, I can't believe I'm getting paid to say this Democratic Party propaganda because I believe it. How come I'm so fortunate? You might think that, right? But you're paid and you do something because in part you're paid to do it, or you would have done it anyway, but you're really happy to get the money. That's one thing. But then there's audience capture where you might say something that you might believe it or you might not. You might go in a specific direction, not because you're paid directly, but because you get praised for saying it. Because the people that follow you, who listen to you, who call your program, say, hey, I really like that. I really appreciate what you did. Now, I got more positive feedback than I usually get for yesterday's program. I focused for the most part on Graham Plattner, who is I would call him a pretty darn progressive Democrat, pretty progressive for Dem. I got criticism too. We got a nice call from both parties are traitors, and we discussed it. But my general sense from the feedback I got in social media and calls was that there was appreciation for what I did, for playing that long clip of a Democrat and being pretty positive, pretty supportive, not completely, but not as negative as I usually am. Now, I could look at that and say, well, this is what my audience wants. I'm going to keep doing it. And there's certainly, a feeling, an incentive I should, and maybe I'll get more viewers that way. They'll recommend. I haven't looked at the actual numbers, and I often do look to see what the numbers say in terms of responses. And I do know that sometimes the progressives, when I go after certain so-called progressive podcasters, that seems to do well. The Zoran shows have done well. And that's a Zoran show is one where I am actually talking pretty positively, at least about one Democrat, although negatively about those in the party who criticize him. But there's, I think, a real appetite among viewers for to hear something positive about the Democrats, about Democratic candidates. And I did provide that yesterday in part. And I think that explains your response. Now, if I were captured by my audience, I would continue that. And maybe I will, at least subconsciously look around to find areas where I feel that Democrats are doing some good things. I may do that. I hope I don't. I hope it doesn't change the way I cover events. But I'm such a contrarian. I'm in a way a little bit disappointed at the positive response because, I mean, I'm glad people like it, but I feel that what's more important is to cut on what I've talked about over and over is that we have to build an alternative. Both parties really are traitors, as both parties are traitors says. I believe they betrayed the American people. They betrayed working people. And I'm trying to build a movement away from them. So when there's something positive to be said, now I hope Graham Plattner, I heard this on Due Dissidence with Jose Vega, the Due Dissidence bros were saying, Keaton and Russell were saying that Democrats will never take on their own party, that there's never going to be, the Dem insider game just can't work because there's not going to be a Dem takeover. AOC, Bernie, they've proven that rather than insurgents taking over the party takes over insurgents. That's their assessment. And I think that's, to a degree, it seems like a very reasonable conclusion. But you still hope, that someone like a Plattner or Mamdani, maybe if there's a critical mass of them, can really move the party away from the corporate influence that has shaped them to such a significant degree. And we have seen that in the past. For example, the FDR administration really, I think, was a repudiation of former Democratic politics. Likewise, the Teddy Roosevelt administration was a repudiation of the Republican Gilded Age pro-Wall Street policies. So you live and you hope, and LBJ certainly repudiated the segregationist history of the Democratic Party, the Southern Democrats. He was a Southern Democrat. Now, Texas, you can argue kind of Southwest. Okay, but still, Texas was a slave state. Texas was fought on the side of the Confederacy, and here a Texas Democrat is the one who signed the civil rights legislation. So there are actual historical examples, albeit quite a long time ago, before most of us can remember, but not all of us, where the Democratic Party actually did some really good things, even where the Republican Party did some good things. I don't think anyone's around remembers Teddy Roosevelt, but maybe, I don't know, maybe you'd have to be awfully old, right? I think he was president 1908, 1904 to 1908, or 1900 to 1908. So you'd have to be 120 years old to remember him. I don't think there are going to be too many people that old. All right, 240-242-5646 if you want to call me. I'm going to just check. I forgot to test my ringer. I've got to do that. I've got to refresh my browser, and you should hear it, and you may have heard it. I just heard it. Okay, so the point I'm making is that to the extent I'm captured by you to be a little bit less critical of the Democratic Party writ large and individual Democrats, that would, to my theme, the theme of this program, which is together we must build a party that will take down the Republicrats, right? The Republicratic regime must fall, must be crushed. I was asked yesterday by Stephanie, well, why do you support the Greens, not DSA? Well, DSA isn't a party, as I mentioned. DSA is an association which endorses candidates, and very frequently it endorses Democrats. They're not actually a direct competitor to the Democratic or Republicratic Party. So that's the answer. If they were a true political party that was independent, then I would say, yeah, let's see what we can do there. I would feel that way. All right. The situation, as I mentioned earlier, continues to be just absolutely horrific in Gaza. There's no light there. There's no light from either party. There's no effort. It appears, certainly in Washington, there are many citizens were horrified by this. I heard Krystal Ball even say that when I think this was on some other program she was on. And I'm not a huge fan, right, of the Krystal and Kyle program and all that stuff. But she said something I really did appreciate. She said it was really an eye-opener to see America pretty much watch with, I guess, I don't know, lack of real concern and indifference to the eradication of a human settlements of a group of people, of millions of people being systemically wiped off the planet. And we're seeing it happen. And I would just note, I've said this before, I think it makes, for me, the Holocaust far more comprehensible, far more understandable, what happened in the 20th century when we see what's happening right now in the 21st. Gaza death toll tops 63,700 from Israel's genocidal war. Over 160,000 Palestinians now injured. And again, those numbers are a massive understatement. I'll give you the count that I have right now. And I'm not certain I'm never certain, but I'm particularly skeptical of these numbers. They did come from Anadolu Ajansi, but they don't seem to add up. I'm just using what they provide today. They don't seem to add up with some of the previous numbers we've used. I'm not sure if that's because of new deaths or if they recounted. The number of killed by Trump seems lower than I would have thought. 63,746 Gazans total. That's the number more than we heard, 63,700. So it's above that number, as AA said, Anadolu Ajansi. That includes 113 additional Palestinians from yesterday. And Netanyahu and Trump have killed over 11,600. It's just so horrific. More people, more children starving, more people being shot at distribution sites, which are basically death sites. It is reminiscent, if you think of your World War II history, of the Shoah Holocaust history, when the Germans would herd Jews, especially in Russia and Ukraine, Belarus, to pits and then shoot them. That they were forced to go to those pits at the point of a gun. The Gazans being shot at the so-called or at the Gaza Inhumanitarian Foundation sites are driven by food, by starvation. They know that they may well get killed. They know that their family may get shot, but the hunger is so great that their options are starve in our tent, starve in our refugee camp. If we're not bombed first, if we're not droned to death first, starve or possibly get shot at a GHF site, but also possibly get food. So that's the choice that Trump and Netanyahu have given the Palestinian people. That's the choice that our government has given the Palestinian people, the Gazan people. All right, before we get to the influencer scandal, the influencer peddling scandal, I guess masterminded by, brainchild of Brian Tyler Cohen. I'm not sure about that. That's not exactly what Taylor Lorenzo, I think as time has moved on, we're seeing more and more what a valuable service she's done to expose these, what I think very fairly, and I used to think it was a little over the top, what Jimmy Dore, and I have a lot of problems with Jimmy Dore, but what I think he accurately has called S-libs, shit libs, what he calls. I think we're in a better position than ever to see just how accurate that term Dore uses is for these people, and to really mega props to Taylor Lorenz for exposing their this influencer peddling scheme. And I don't want to be too, look, I get it. They want the money. Who doesn't? We'll talk a little bit more about that. In the end, though, they're taking money, they're being given money, and that is with a tacit, if not explicit, understanding that the message that will be presented to you, that they will use the confidence that you have in them, that's being leveraged to present a DNC, CorporaDem, corporatist, pro-Zionist, Zio-Nazi message. That is ultimately what I think we're seeing right here. And it's not all written out, it's not all explicit, but it sure seems to be what's happening. This is Mona Chalby. We'll get to the Taylor Lorenz story. I also want to talk a little bit about the chess world and an interesting development in French chess later on in the program. But let's go to Mona Chalby. Now, I really wasn't familiar with her name. I should have been. She is apparently a Pulitzer Prize winning former New York Times reporter, and she's going to talk about the media. I'm not going to do a lot here, but she has an interesting comment in this interview with Middle East Eye about what the response could be to the fundamentally dishonest coverage the New York Times is providing you about Israel and Palestine.
Viewers, if they want to change some of their media habits, aside from not reading some of these sources altogether, and I would argue that actually boycotting some of these sources of information makes far more sense than boycotting Starbucks or McDonald's.
Really? All right, so she doesn't mention the New York Times right there, but she's worked for the New York Times, and they've been talking about, and I didn't want to play like forever, but I'll play this again in a moment. But she's saying, hey, it makes more sense to boycott these dishonest media than even a Starbucks or a McDonald's, because the harm that CNN, that Fox, although Fox does have, right, they have, what's his name again? I can't now, Tucker. They have Tucker, who has been a little bit better than some when it comes to covering Israel. MSNBC, which had Joy Reid, but they really deprecated her, fired their Palestinian journalists, fired Muslim journalists who were critical of Israel, Mehdi Hassan. So she's saying, hey, maybe you should boycott them. Let me play this again. I'll play from a little bit earlier. I think it's really interesting.
In fact, one way that I would say to viewers, if they want to change some of their media habits, aside from not reading some of these sources altogether, and I would argue that actually boycotting some of these sources of information makes far more sense than boycotting Starbucks or McDonald's.
Really?
Because
that's an interesting take.
These journalistic institutions have done far more to support the genocide than these capitalist organizations have, in my opinion.
Sure.
All right, so a couple of thoughts on that. First of all, obviously the New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, these are capitalist institutions as well. These are part of the corporate stranglehold on our society. So she's saying McDonald's, Starbucks, they're almost pure capitalist play, certainly crony capitalist, right? Because they're enormous. There's so many different outlets, right? There's, they're all, there's a million of them. There's lots of different Starbucks here, there, and everywhere, lots of different McDonald's all over the world. So it's really almost more crony capitalism than true capitalism. It's not like in Jerusalem, where I'm sure there are both McDonald's and Starbucks, I think there are, that some entrepreneur, some, aspiring business person, creative type said, oh, I've got this great idea for a restaurant. No, it's, oh, well, I can just replicate here what's worked everywhere else. So I would call that much more crony capitalism than I would real, innovative, what do they call it? Creative, a destructive capitalism at all. It is destructive, but it's certainly not in the least bit creative. But New York Times is part of that as well, dominating the newspaper business all over the world at this point. Likewise, those TV networks have tremendous influence and control over media worldwide. So they're all part of the same capitalist structure. The other thought I had when I listened to this is, well, I do read the New York Times. I actually subscribe. I pay for it. And I've thought about canceling it, or I've thought about trying to get it on the free so I don't pay them money. But they do provide me with real value. And she does say that. She actually says that later in the interview. I'm not going to play that part of it. But she says, yeah, it's kind of too bad I don't read the paper anymore because of their fundamentally dishonest Zio-Nazi coverage. But she says it's really unfortunate because in some, in areas where they're not bought and paid for, they're not under the control of special interests, they actually do really, really good work. So it's true. The writing is excellent. I mean, there's a lot of things about the New York Times that are positive. For me, I could say I boycott McDonald's and Starbucks, but I don't boycott them. I just don't patronize them. Their product is lousy, in my opinion. I think their coffee, for example, at Starbucks is way overpriced, and I don't think it's very good either. I never buy coffee out, but if I did, I'd go to Dunkin' Donuts all day long over Starbucks, or frankly, I'd go to McDonald's to get coffee over Starbucks. I'd go anywhere but Starbucks to get coffee. And I don't go to McDonald's because the food is awful. It's just disgusting. It's inedible. It's that bad. So no, I mean, but their product sucks. But the New York Times product isn't that bad. In fact, in some cases, it's extremely good. It's remarkably good that they can do what they do. So yeah, I mean, I think that in a way it's apples to oranges. But what she's saying about the harm that our media institutions is doing is so true, are doing. By the way, thank you, Zaina. I love your positive comment there. That's very nice of you. Likely it's 500,000. So she's saying 500,000 dead Palestinians. I'm sure that that certainly could well be true. Whether it is or not, I don't know. But God, we just hope it isn't. We just hope it isn't. All right, 240-242-5646. If you're listening and you want to chime in, I always love to hear from people. Just going to look in the chat here. Got the comment from Zena. Thank you so much. See if we have anything in our live chat. Hasn't popped up yet, so I'm not sure. There may be something there that I'm missing. Let me get to the, and again, the theme of this program, yes, salty Dems, Brian Tyler Cohen, David Pakman. They're pissed. Their little grift or whatever you want to call it was exposed. They're not happy about it. I'm going to show you that real quick. That the heck is going on here? I'm having a little bit of trouble with my yeah, there we go. I was having a little trouble with my slides, so I just was kind of messing up. But let me just show you, because I did something a little different, and if you want to comment on this too, I'd love to hear you. I actually put an image of myself. I've been working with a guy who is very helpful to me, and one of his suggestions, I don't know if it's a great picture, though. I don't love that picture of me. I think I'm better when I'm actually broadcasting than the stills, but it's not terrible. So I'm in there with Pakman and Cohen. But I wouldn't call myself a salty Dem. I'm a salty green. But they are pissed. They're mad. Look, Pakman's contemplating suing. That's from his thumbnail, so it's just from him. And then the Cohen is an image from the video we'll play in a little bit of his defense of their whole little scheme that's going on right now, where they're a bunch of influencers. I don't know quite how many, 25, 30, some reasonably large number, who are getting money up to $8,000 a month, which Krystal and Sagar kind of poo-pooed. Oh, Pakman is making millions. He has 2 million subscribers, actually over 3. But again, I'm not quite buying the millions. Maybe, they were saying, oh, we could do ads, we could make a lot more, whatever. I don't know. Millions seems a little bit high for me, given what I've seen is the likely payoff for 1 million subscribers. Again, it's very variable from, as little as 60,000 per million subscribers per annum to maybe a couple $100,000. But Pakman's in the 3 million range. So maybe he is making $1 million. Seems a little much to me. So the initiative aimed at boosting Dems online offers influencers up to $8,000 a month to push the party line. All they have to do is keep it secret and agree to restrictions on their content. So it is very unfortunate. You don't know who's paying them, whether their message is being changed, being impacted by that money. You got to believe it is. And I would just note, I'm not even persuaded these are necessarily that it's necessarily designed to boost Democrats. I mean, I assume Brian Tyler Cohen is efforting that he wants Democrats to do well. I'm sure that is true. He's always made no bones. He seems clearly, a CorporaDem. That's what he is. But we have seen AIPAC pouring millions and millions and millions of dollars into races on behalf of Democratic candidates. And I don't think they're not a Democratic group. AIPAC isn't pro-Democrat. They supported Trump for president. They're trying to, and they're succeeding, and this dark money group as well, Chorus, whatever you want to call it, 1630, their goal may not be so much as to necessarily elect Democrats, but just to make sure that if Democrats are elected, they're tractable, they're controllable, they're going to follow what the puppet master tells them. The strings are right there. That's what this is about. It's not about necessarily in electing Democrats. It's electing a certain kind of Democrat. And it's taking down any Democrat who might be an independent, who might not take marching orders from the boardrooms high above Wall Street, along Lake Michigan, in Los Angeles, in Beijing. That's what this is about. It's about making sure whoever gets elected, whatever Republicrat is considered by you as a potential vote for a vote, they're going to be the Democrat or Republican that will do what we want. We being the billionaire class, we being the 0.1%, we being the funders of 1630 and Chorus. And it's just the way it is. I mean, that's ultimately why I say, screw both parties, man. Let's go. Let's find something better. There could be, we could do better. We have to do better. All right, here's David. I wanted to lead with this because I thought Pakman's, we'll play about a minute of this, but I just thought it was so interesting the way he reacted to the divulgement, is that a word? To the divulging by Taylor Lawrence that he's getting this $8,000 a month by Chorus, and he didn't tell anybody about it. He didn't tell anyone where the money's coming from. He doesn't probably know himself, but that he signed a specific contract that gives certain that puts certain controls on him. So here we go.
Well, I hate to start a show like this, but I do have to talk today about a defamation lawsuit.
So that's the first thought is I'm going to sue, right? That, or at least he's going to talk about it. But I guess in a way I hope he sues because, I think a lot of information will come out. It almost certainly he won't sue because my guess is that the dark money group doesn't want him to sue. But I don't know, maybe they're talking to lawyers. I have no idea.
That made a number of untrue allegations and implications about me and other creators, claiming I'm taking money in exchange for letting someone dictate the content of this show or...
All right, that's a false statement by Pakman. At no point in that Wired article, you can read it yourself, at no point in that Wired article does Taylor Lorenz say that Chorus, Brian Tyler Cohen, is dictating what Pakman can or can't say. At no point. The one area where they say that you have to run things by them is if you're going to interview people. If you're going to interview politicians, then you do. And interestingly, Pakman hasn't interviewed Zoran Mamdani. And interestingly, Pakman has interviewed, in a very fawning interview, Richie Torres, the Zion-Nazi Congress member from the Bronx, the South Bronx, which is the poorest district, the poorest congressional district in the country, a Congress member who took millions of dollars who takes millions from AIPAC and has done virtually nothing for his very, very impoverished constituency.
Strict what I'm talking about and many other claims and implications. a whole bunch of you wrote to me and said, David, are you going to sue for defamation?
So I think it's so fascinating that he centers himself completely, right? I mean, it's all about Pakman. I was defamed. They said these untrue things about me. So am I going to sue? There's no conversation about actually the topics he discusses, why he brings them up. He doesn't at any point to the contract with Course. I guess it's a non-disclosure deal. He doesn't talk about the propriety of such a deal. He doesn't discuss the potential, whether it's reasonable for his viewers to question whether he's, speaking from the heart. He's speaking sincerely. He doesn't talk about any of that. It's just about him. I mean, this is narcissism at another level, really. And I always, personally, I never liked this guy. I remember back in the day, Arlen mentioned he remembers Pakman back when 10 years ago, 12 years. I remember that. I remember when he first was on YouTube, and people asked me if I followed him, and this is about when Sam Cedar who had been on Air America, and that folded, and then he went on his own podcast on YouTube, and then Pakman was there too. And I watched Pakman. I was like, this is just another, I didn't use the term, but another S-lib. He's just another Democratic shill. He's not demanding better for the American public. And he's not demanding better for you, for his listeners, for his viewers, nothing. He's just concerned about himself. It's incredibly self-centered, which is somewhat ironic if he's really making millions a year. If he's doing so well, you'd think he'd want to maybe come totally clean with his audience.
For defamation, and winning is really the way to take control back and to prove that you didn't do the things you're accused of. Now, it's a fair question, and I want to talk about that today. I didn't even plan on mentioning this entire fiasco again, but it really has taken on a life of its own. So I'm going to
I think that's really interesting, Bob. I'm going to play a little more of this in a moment. But so the fiasco, as he calls it, which is the exposure of these the influence peddling disclosure, right? That this group, Chorus, is selling influence. They're saying to the dark money donors, we'll let you influence our programming. It may not be explicit. There's nothing going to be, directing. You're going to talk about this. You're going to talk about that. But you're going to help us build some of these brands. We'll help make them look a little more professional, maybe. We'll help with the thumbnails. We'll help with the distribution. I note that Pakman's distribution has skyrocketed, right? I mentioned him, compared him to Cedar. They always were pretty close. I think they passed the 1 million mark in subscribers. I didn't follow that closely, but to the extent I would look, they're about the same. They're about the same. And now suddenly, in the past year or two, Pakman has jumped way ahead of Cedar. Cedar's not part of this. He's much more critical of the Democratic Party. I don't love Cedar. I've had my differences with Cedar. I think he and Emma are way too identity politics oriented and not nearly they're too pro-Democrat for my blood, my taste. But they're critical of the Democrats. They're pro-Palestine for one thing, which I am very appreciative. So, it's interesting that taking the money seems to have certainly helped Pakman get a lot more subs. And that's true for the same dynamic we're seeing with Kyle Kulinski, although, as I understand it, he's not part of this at all. Although, who knows, right? We don't know everybody who's part of Chorus.
Am I suing for defamation question in a moment, but I also want to lay out a few other things. The saddest part for me in all of this is that even though, after the first 48 hours, the overwhelming majority of
the saddest part for him, it's just astonishing to me that this is how he looks at it. That it's so about David Pakman. He's one of a number of so-called influencers who are mentioned, who are part of this. And the only lens he has is his own. He centered himself 100%. And I think that has to also come out in his broadcasts, which don't really, and I don't watch him much, but from what little I've seen, he really isn't able to put himself in other people's shoes. The interview with Richie Torres is such a perfect example. Positive commentary towards Torres, completely failing to recognize the harm that Torres's policies are causing, and also failing to recognize that Torres is not delivering for the people in his district who are not privileged, in directly different from 100% different from Pakman, who's extraordinarily privileged.
Members and fellow creators and others realize there's really no story here. Like it's not even just the allegations and implications.
You say now no one believes it, right? No one's believing this story. But obviously they are. That's why he's doing this. He's really concerned. And he talks about losing subscriptions. He talks about people who pay for his product. God knows why anyone would. And he's really upset about it. So he's just trying to deal with it, something that's hurt him, hurt his brand, and rightfully so. It should have hurt his brand. The influencer universe is really, really upset about it. They're just really going after Taylor. They're really attacking her. And if you listen to that, there's no substance to Pakman's complaints. But this is hurting them, and I'm glad it is. We have to be, as consumers of videos, we're just discerning and just not listen because we like what we hear, because someone's saying something we want to hear, like, oh, the Democrats are good, which is what Pakman tells you all the time. But are they good? What are they good? What are they doing? Are they delivering? I know you can see that rectangle there. I'm going to play. This is a guy on TikTok. He calls himself Good Trouble. He just lambastes Taylor Lorenz. And this video's gotten a ton of attention, this TikTok video here from Good Trouble. It kind of turned my stomach watching it. He's really a very loathsome appearing individual from where I sit. But I wanted to play it because, again, his points have been, and he's probably part of this project. I mean, I'm guessing he's part of the Chorus project, but here we go.
Article. The point is that none of them disclosed that they were receiving money from a dark money group, the 1630 fund. None of them have ever disclosed, as far as I've ever seen, their relationship with the 1630 fund. And that is the crux of it. Chorus is just the middleman. They're just running the program. The 1630 fund is the powerful dark money group that is funding this effort. And so,
do you know what you're...
All right, so let me stop it right there. 100%. I mean, this is true. And he's not going to take issue with that at all. He's just going to attack Taylor Lorenz because she exposed, I'm presuming, his grift too. I presume this guy is part of that. I mean, why else would he spend all this time and distribute this? Obviously, he sees a benefit to him, but probably, add to his cred with these influence peddlers.
So crazy about this, Tay-Tay. We haven't seen your financial disclosure about...
All right, so now he's arguing that somehow she's supposed to disclose. What is she supposed to disclose? She's already said, tell her she's writing for Wired, and she gets a grant. She's actually getting a grant from the Omidyar group, which she's been very upfront about. So he's saying she hasn't disclosed it. She has. So she's been absolutely honest about it.
Accepting money from this exact same fund, the 1630 fund, which funds...
So she's saying they accept money from the 1630 fund. He's saying she's getting money from the 1630 fund. So we're going to explore that. Remember, her grant is from the Omidyar group.
Cohort that you are accepting, get this, audience, $8,000 a month from. Isn't that fucking crazy?
So I love the curse, like that's supposed to be meaningful, right? Oh, I'm cursing. Oh, I must be telling the truth, I guess.
Right here.
So there he's showing this tax form contributions to the Omidyar group, which is where she actually does work. And she's never denied it. Yeah, that's where I work, this reporting group.
It's the place that pays you $16.30. That's you accepting dark money, right? I'm sure.
Well, she's not paid by them. That's not who pays her.
This is just a misunderstanding, right? I'm just a massive fuck.
The snark is so, I hate that. I hate that crap. I hate these phonies. But I want to just show you. So he put on the screen this guy, Good Trouble. This tax form, I guess, this 1630 fund. So that they actually gave some money to this Omidyar group. Let me see if I can get this up for you. Show you what he actually put on screen, because you can't read it, but I'll make it much bigger. So this is what he actually shows. And it's interesting. He doesn't show you the bottom of it. He just shows you that the Schedule 1, the 1630 fund, gave money to the Omidyar Network Services, LLC. That's not what she worked for. She doesn't, it's a separate entity from the Omidyar reporting group or whatever it is that Taylor Lorenz worked for. But even more relevant, even more relevant than that. Again, he doesn't show you the whole page, but when you look at the actual page, you'll see the year. So that's the year that he shows you. And when was that? 22. Let me show you the whole page right here. April 22. And I'm going to try to get it up there so you can see it. The money, and I know this has been reported elsewhere, but I really thought it was worthwhile focusing again because it shows the desperation of these people. They want to keep getting their secret money. And I get it. You're hungry. It's tough. It's tough out there. You got a gig. If you can make this pay, it's amazing. It's awesome. You got to talk in your room, in your house. Oh my God. You got all sorts of bennies if it works for you. But the pay is so little unless you really blow up. For most people, they're just scratching if they're getting anything at all. So I get it. You want this to work out and you're getting paid for it. Now somebody's throwing a monkey wrench into it. And you're really angry. You're bitter about it. Hey, the best way to get in good with my donors, the secret money, the dark money, is to go after the people exposing them. But it's so phony. It's so dishonest. April 22 was when that is for the fiscal year 22. And then the next year, and that's not even who she gets paid by. They get nothing. Her group, the reporting grant money that she gets, there's not one penny that comes from even that Omidyar group we just talked about, and certainly not from 1630. But this guy even had to know it because he showed you, although he barely showed it to you, a form from 22. But if you look at the 23 return, there it is, Ohioans, and then one APIA, Nevada. So, no, there's nothing shady or unknown to this. But even if they were getting money from 1630, it would be divulged. You'd see it on this tax return. But as far as I know, 1630 isn't even telling anyone it's giving money to Chorus. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't think they may not need to, because I'm not sure if Chorus is even called a 501c4. Maybe. In any event, it's clearly not the same. Taylor Lorenz doesn't report to anyone about... she just presented an article, which, by the way, was very, very critical of 1630. So it's complete fabrication. They're making the argument because they've been exposed. And they're bitter, they're angry that they were exposed. Pakman is so angry he's contemplating suing. I'm sure he won't, even acknowledges he probably won't sue in that video I played for you. This guy, Good Trouble, snarky, nasty, fundamentally dishonest. That's really our media right now. I mean, you have no one. There's no one to trust. I want to play Krystal Ball now. I've been critical of Krystal, not as critical as I am of her husband. He's a progressive. I don't use that S-lib term the way Jimmy does. I call them progressives, but she's a bit of a progressive too, as we'll learn as we go through this program. But they did a decent job, and I was quite interested that she and Sagar actually are pretty critical, but they only go so far. Like they are always only go so far when they go after Dems. Likewise, they only go so far in going after. And there's Pakman, and I think that's Pakman, a very young Pakman in that image. Here we go.
The implication in the article that this is some arm of the DNC or the Democratic Party.
Actually, that's not the implication of the article. The article says these are, funders who may be aligned in some ways with the Democratic Party and sometimes give money to the Democratic Party. But the article, Taylor Lorenz never says, oh yeah, the Democratic Party is calling the shots. At no point do they say that. So he's just phony. He's just making it up. He's just making stuff up. Trying desperately, is Brian Tyler Cohen here? And this is from Breaking Points. I'm it's a meta because it's the Breaking Points coverage of the Brian Tyler Green video, which you can also find. He's just trying to come up with something, throwing it against the wall, hoping something will stick.
Literally nothing to do with the DNC. I spend 0 minutes of my day thinking about the DNC. The creators do not toe any party line. How could we? There isn't a party line. Creators are absolutely allowed to speak out against the Democrats, and in fact, plenty do.
And they do. They generally speak out against progressive Democrats, against leftist Democrats. Apparently, one of the recipients is this guy, Too Raw, Too Real, who's really been an aggressive attacker of leftist Democrats, to the extent they exist, Rashida Tlaib among them. Got invited to the White House as a result of his attacks on the left flank of the Democratic Party. So yeah, they'll criticize Dems if they're pro-Palestine, if they're pro-Medicare for all, if they're too critical of the Dem elites and the Dem establishment. Yeah, they'll criticize them.
Course creators should and do criticize Democrats when they suck. And quite often, they do suck. 1630 Fund is our fiscal sponsor. One of the largest documented donors to 1630 Fund is the same person funding Meteor's Reporters in Residence program, which Taylor Lorenz herself is a part of. And guess what her monthly stipend is?
I believe that isn't accurate, but even if it were true, yes, Omidyar did give some money to Chorus, to 1630, which then gives to Chorus, because they're honest about it, because they told you. They told you. So that's how come they were transparent. But Taylor Lorenz has never made any secret of who she gets her money from, and she said it's Omidyar. So I don't get his point. We don't know who's funding 1630 except maybe Omidyar, because Omidyar said we're funding 1630, and you never told us that you were getting money from 1630, and we don't know who gets money from 1630. That was all a secret. So none of this is legitimate criticism of Taylor Lorenz, and all this does, Brian Tyler Cohen, is make you look even shadier and sleazier and scuzzier than we already thought you were.
$8,000 per month. So she's criticizing an entity that is funded by someone that she is currently taking money from. I guess it's okay.
She's criticizing the you. She's criticizing you for taking money from 1630 without having any idea, without sharing the fact that you're taking money from 1630, without sharing who the money comes from with your viewers, or the fact that they're even getting the money, or that there's certain strings are attached to that money, and that you're curating who you give the money to so that they'll support a certain message. That's what people are upset about. And all that, none of that applies to Taylor Lorenz, who was up front. Yes, I'm getting an Omidyar scholarship, and I am reporting as best I can about the media. And she did. I mean, every reporter gets paid if they're working for an institution. But no one knew your influencers were getting paid. Everyone knew Lorenz, if they wanted to, they could find out in a heartbeat where she got her money. Nobody has any idea, even now, where your influencers, your 1630 people get money, except perhaps from Omidyar to a degree, because Omidyar came clean and said it.
Paid, but no one else. There are people like Taylor Lorenz who are desperate to tear the left apart. And
all right, that's a joke right there. That line really struck me, where he says, oh, she's desperate to tear the left apart. Here's a flash for you. You ain't the left. You're a corporate Democratic hack. You repeat Democratic lies. You consistently sheepdog leftists, trying desperately to keep them from voting green or voting anyway, but for the Democrats. You make excuses for the Democrats. Your entire shtick is beating up Trump and Republicans. You're not a leftist. And when we criticize you and we criticize Pakman, we're not criticizing leftists. We're criticizing sleazy elites who are fundamentally dishonest.
Omidyar's Reporters in Residence program, which Taylor Lorenz herself is a part of. And guess what her monthly stipend is? $8,000 per month. So she's criticizing an entity that is funded by someone that she is currently taking money from. I guess it's okay when Taylor Lorenz gets paid, but no one else. There are people like Taylor Lorenz who are desperate to tear the left apart. And in fact, it becomes clear who her efforts help when you hear stuff like this.
Genuinely, I kind of like Taylor Lorenz because I know that she actually believes what she says.
Totally
Do you get what I'm
agree.
saying?
So yeah,
So they're actually making fun of Taylor Lorenz. Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson are making fun of her. She's just like, yeah, can you believe she really believes what she tells you? But at least they're saying she's sincere. We can believe it. We do. She does believe it. Now, you don't have to agree with her. I generally often do. But, she's very critical, for example, of Israel. And actually, so is Candace Owens. So I'm not sure where in that clip what that was about. But this is a pure guilt by association somehow. And it's so standard for these Dem establishment types, for these bought and paid for corrupt Democrats. Oh, look, you got to just throw everything out. Anything she says, you just have to completely disregard because Candace Owens said one nice thing about her. It's so transparent BS. And sadly, people are going to fall for it. People are going to believe this.
I really don't align myself with friends of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens.
Tucker Carlson, by the way, deserves a tremendous amount of credit, of course, for being an early opponent of the Ukraine war, which is one of the reasons Democrats hate him so much. And also for being skeptical about the slaughter in Israel, by Israel, the slaughter by Israel in Gaza. All right, so there's the video. So it's all crap. It's all BS. It's there, and I don't know if he's really desperate. I don't know what this is about. This is that, I guess they hired some what is that show person who damage control, I guess. I guess that's what this is. Harm reduction. I don't really know, but it's disgusting. It's just really disgusting what they're doing. And even Krystal Ball, who kind of plays a little bit in that same sandbox with these people, at least in terms of their policies, politics, she cannot in any way defend this crap.
Again, if you are on the left, look, I get that I think the best case you can make for them is basically like, look, the right is doing this and we got to throw on we're dealing with fascism. We got to throw on the playbook. And I get it's not ideal, but we got to fight against fascism in whatever way we can. And so that's why we're taking the money. None of them even really acknowledge that there's an ethical question here. And that to me is a real red. How can you call yourself on the left and you're not even contemplating the ethical dilemmas that are involved here and explaining, well, I get why it's a problem and maybe in another time, but here's why I came down on the side. No, it just.
Yeah. So she's right. I mean, you heard Pakman, you heard Cohen, they just attack. Oh, I'm going to file a lawsuit. Oh, she's getting money from the same people that we're getting it from. Of course, we knew she was getting that money. We had no idea you were. And she's critical. and you're not. So go F yourself, Cohen. But even Krystal Ball, who I think shares some of Cohen's, any blue will do kind of politics, can't defend it. And here's Sagar weighing in, I guess, or maybe Krystal does too. They're talking about the money. And I think it's interesting. Let me leave it at that.
Make it. And again, look, I get it. Sagar and I were both established before. We had the Hill, all of that. So we did have some.
So she's talking about how she's able to do it, how he's able to do it. See, we're great. We're so special. We don't even take money. We're able to build our brand without taking the money. Now, I have problems with them taking money without letting you know. I wouldn't have a problem if, you had a little blurb when you were watching these videos and they said, this is sponsored by thus and such. Here are the donors. Okay, well, then we know. And she's like, oh, we're so great. We don't have to do that. Look at us. We're established. So, I find this really frustrating too, because there's a real problem here. People who are in this space don't get paid. Many of us don't. I guess it is a problem. YouTube is taking most of the money, obviously, the ad revenue. Just look at the price. Google's stock price has skyrocketed because of YouTube. It's incredibly profitable. There is some competition, but this is the major space for creators. I love what they provide for me. I don't need the money, but they definitely are profiting, I think, disproportionately. I don't know what the answer is. I do know what the answer is. You know what the answer is? The Justice Department needs to break up Google, and they need to guarantee everybody healthcare, and they need to guarantee everybody, security. And then people could say, okay, well, I'm going to live a relatively Spartan life. I'm going to give this a try. And, I won't starve. My family won't be homeless, but we won't live that well for a while I try my efforts at being a podcaster. That's the real answer.
We're doing just fine over here. We're able to build this new set, all of that. So
we're so great. Look at us. We're basically presenting the same message that Brian Tyler Cohen is. We supported Kamala. We're an any blue will do kind of group. At least I am. I'm Sagar's a Republican, a libertarian. But so, hey, if we don't need to take the money, why should anybody?
Doesn't require selling out to some dark money super PAC to be able to make it. And again, look, I get it. Sagar and I were both established before. We had the Hill, all of that. So we did have some advantages. I don't want to deny that. But, Kyle didn't. And he's doing good too.
Look at how great. Well, Kyle actually did kind of, right? He had founded Justice Democrats. I think he was a pretty well-known in the progressive spaces. So that really helped boost him. He also got an enormous boost when he became far less critical of the Democratic Party and far more supportive when he started talking about how great Joe Biden was, what a good president he was. The message that Krystal and Kyle push out is pretty congenial to the Democratic elites. It's not positive towards the Democratic elites, but they ultimately come back to, you got to vote for the Democrat. You got to vote for Joe Biden. You got to vote for Kamala Harris. And ultimately, that's all they care about. So in a way, they love it. Here are some lefties, or at least so-called lefties, who are willing to criticize, who are, people, viewers, progressives will watch and go, hey, I can trust Krystal and Kyle. They're calling it out. They're for Medicare for all. They do recognize there's some real value in the Green Party, but they also say we have to vote Democrat. So that's a message that the DNC loves. They love that all day long. And that message has, as Krystal said, been very lucrative for them, very profitable for them. And Kyle's viewership has skyrocketed much as Pakman's has, even if he hasn't taken that $8,000. Maybe he wasn't offered it. Maybe he declined it. I don't know. Maybe he is on the list. We don't know of the donees. But the message that he provides is ultimately acceptable. Let's play a little bit from this, from 2023.
Happy to acknowledge the furniture placement is gorgeous. I love the floral arrangements, but that's not what we bargained for. And if your desire is to push the Democratic Party left, You have to, Chris Hedges says this all the time, it's a politics of fear. If you are more afraid of electing Trump than the Democratic Party is, you are never going to be able to exert any leverage on them at all. And I understand that's a risky position. I understand Trump getting...
So she's responding there, is Brianna Joy Gray, to the argument by Krystal and Kyle, hey, Trump is so bad and the Democrats are so much better, you have to vote for Joe Biden. And she's saying, but when you do that, when you just say, well, Trump equals bad, therefore we have to vote for him, you'll give, you're giving carte blanche to the Democratic Party to be as corporatist as it wants, to continue to betray working people. You have to understand that. And they just won't accept that. They just reject that.
Harry, I understand that there are meaningful ways in which he's hurt real people in real ways.
So she's saying Trump's hurt real people in real ways. Of course, so has Biden, right? I mean, this is not an either or. They're both bad. Now, to be sort of fair, this was broadcast on September 8, 23, or at least it was recorded then. So that's before October 7th, is before the Israeli most violent reprisals, the most violent genocidal acts had begun. So it's the worst, the worst from Israel is yet to come. But we'd already seen Biden prolonging and pushing for the war with Ukraine. We've already seen him improving more and more oil leases. We've already seen him refuse to intervene when the Senate parliamentarian said that we couldn't have a $15 minimum wage. So Biden did a lot about it. We've already seen him put in his cabinet three paid, former paid military industrial complex, Flax, Lloyd Austin. Oh, I say the names Lloyd Austin from Raytheon, board of Raytheon, Avril Haines from Palantir, Antony Blinken from Boeing. So he'd already done all of that. He'd already stopped the railway workers from striking after the Palestine, I think it was the East Palestine crash. I'm not sure. Maybe there was a different issue there. So there was a lot of really bad things that Joe Biden had done. And nevertheless, Krystal and Kyle, especially Kyle, are just telling us how great Joe Biden is.
And all of that. And we just have a difference of opinion about what the priorities are. You said in that viral clip, Krystal, if your priority is reelecting the Democratic Party, then X, Y, and Z. And I think that was good that you said that because you articulated what the priority is for you.
No, that is not the priority for me. The policy is the priority for me, Brie. And I think you know that. And I think it's
so she's being snarky. She said herself, according to, I don't know the whole thing, she's being really snarky. She says, hey, if you want to reelect the Dems, this is what you have to do. And she's saying, no, my priority isn't reelecting Dems. It's policy. But in a way, it is reelecting Dems because you've been telling us how awful Trump is the whole time. We can't have him be president. So therefore, we must reelect the Dems.
But let me just say, though, is it worth? I mean, I think you care a lot about the labor movement, right?
Sure.
So is it worth letting that baby be smothered in the crib in order to what? I mean, that's the piece that.
So they're saying, that this guy is a friend of labor, except he's not. He stopped the strike, the railway strike in its tracks. Although he did not, embrace free trade, he really had no choice. He couldn't. I mean, it was at that point the country had strongly turned against free trade. He stopped the $15 minimum wage. He had threatened to veto any Medicare for all or any Medicare expansion, which would be the best thing you could do for workers. So this idea, now I understand there were some good NLRB appointments, but again, it's just fiddling on the edges. American workers were actually becoming poorer. They were less empowered during the Biden administration. And, you can point to a few counterexamples, but in the end, Biden was not a friend of labor. And for her to say that is really, really annoying. So for Krystal to kind of pat herself and Kyle on the back as somehow these honest, progressive, pro-working class hosts is just absurd. And I'm just going to play one more clip. This is from a Halitics I did last month, maybe or 2 months ago, where I was so pissed off, especially at Krystal and Kyle, because they went after Cenk Uygur when he had one of his periodic really good ideas, which is we have to reach out to MAGA. And here's what they had to say about that.
Left and liberals banding together and going through the court system and public pressure. That's it. That's all we've seen.
Is MAGA a fascist movement? Just give me a yes or no.
So that's where Kyle is trying desperately, because the whole message that Uygur is presenting is we've got to work with the MAGA people. We've got to reach out to them, that, Trump is going to betray them. Trump is betraying them in certain areas. We want them to be, at least some of them to come over. And he's like, is MAGA fascist? Yes or no? Yes or no? So just, again, trying to pit working people against each other, right? Trying to pit the 99%, divide them. That's exactly what Kulinski's doing. That's exactly what the 1630 people are doing. That's exactly what Course is doing. Rather, they're doing everything they can to keep poor, struggling working people from uniting across party lines to demand a bigger slice of the pie. And Kulinski is caping for them 100%, caping for those elites, those establishment figures. So I really don't want to hear any self-righteousness, any, condescension whatsoever from Krystal Ball. All right, we're through the program, and I got my points out. I will be back tomorrow, Thursday. Did not get to talk about the trans chess champion, didn't talk about Nathan Robinson, but we'll get to those. Those topics will come later this week. Thanks so much for being part of Halitics, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.